This is the state of coastal Odisha. Its position along the Bay of Bengal makes it a frequent target for some of the most intense weather systems in the Indian Ocean. On October 27, 1999, 19-year-old Prashant had traveled 18 kilometers from his home to visit a friend in the town of Ersama. He arrived just as the atmosphere began to shift. That evening, a storm gathered with a speed and fury Prashant had never seen. Winds reached a velocity of 350 kilometers per hour, battering houses and uprooting trees that had stood for generations. The rain was incessant, filling the darkness as surging floodwaters swept away entire houses. Even buildings made of brick and mortar struggled to withstand the pressure of the rising tide and falling debris. In a single night, a teenager was cut off, trapped in a historic catastrophe. As the water rose neck-deep inside the house, Prashant and his friend's family climbed onto the roof. They sat huddled in the open, freezing as the rain washed away Prashant's tears. 2 coconut trees had been uprooted and crashed directly onto the building. The tender coconuts from those fallen trees provided the only food to prevent starvation. For 2 days, Prashant watched the deadly brown sheet of water cover everything. His only thought was of his family. Had they been swept away? The roof offered no escape from the cold or the terrifying devastation surrounding them. As the rain finally began to recede, Prashant refused to wait any longer. Despite protests, he prepared to walk the 18 kilometers back through the flood zone. He took a long, sturdy stick to locate the road beneath the water. He used it to measure the depth, swimming when the path vanished and wading through waist-deep mud to maintain his direction. The scenes grew more macabre with every mile. He had to push away the floating bodies that the current swept against him. Passing through leveled villages, he wept, certain that his family could not have survived. When he finally reached his village, Kalikuda, his heart went cold. Where his home once stood, only the remnants of the roof remained, with his family's belongings tangled in the high branches of the surviving trees. He headed toward the local Red Cross shelter. It was a scene of chaos, with thousands of survivors crowded together, weak from hunger and trauma. He spotted his grandmother. She rushed toward him in tears, having given him up for dead. Soon, his brother, sister, and extended family gathered around him. Prashant was no longer alone, but the relief was tempered by the sight of 2,500 people in the shelter sinking into a deathly grief. By the 4th day, the situation was desperate. 86 people in the village were dead, and every single house had been washed away. The few coconuts they had salvaged were gone. Prashant decided to act. He organized a group of youths to pressure the local merchant into parting with his rice. They returned through the receding waters with enough food to feed the entire shelter. They gathered fallen branches to light a fire and cook the rotting rice. For the first time since the storm hit, the survivors finally had a meal. To secure more help, Prashant had the children lie in the sand with empty utensils on their stomachs. The signal worked. Military helicopters spotted them and began regular airdrops of food and basic supplies. In less than a week, a group of volunteers led by a teenager had replaced the silence of the disaster with a coordinated system for survival and hygiene. As the weeks passed, Prashant saw that the women and orphan children were sinking deeper into paralyzing grief. They had survived the water, but the emotional weight was now the greater threat. He resisted the government's plan to put orphans in institutions. Instead, he worked to resettle them within their own community, creating new foster families where childless widows could care for children who had lost their parents. He organized cricket matches and sports events to give the children a reason to find joy and a way to process their trauma through play. Harsh Monder observed that Prashant's spirit healed because he had no time for his own pain. When the next storm gathers on the horizon, we often look to the strength of our walls. But what happens when the only thing left standing